My 5-year-old grandson, Leo, asked the question that destroyed my son's marriage and his future inheritance. "Grandpa," he whispered, looking up from under the table, "why is Daddy's friend playing footsie with Mommy?" That night was supposed to be a celebration, a lavish anniversary dinner I was paying for at the Capitol Grill. I'm Hank, 62 years old, built my construction company from nothing, and I've always lived by two rules: hard work and loyalty. My son Mark and his wife Jessica, however, seemed to live by different rules: entitlement and deceit. I loved Leo, but I tolerated them. If you appreciate stories of justice served cold and believe that family respect isn't optional, make sure you hit subscribe right now. You won't want to miss the complete fallout of this tale. We were barely through the appetizers. The atmosphere was thick with fake cheer, typical for any gathering involving Mark and Jessica. Jessica was draped in the diamond necklace I bought her, smiling sweetly at Mark's business partner, Chad, a slick operator with a smug grin. Mark, ever the grifter, was already pressing me, leaning in close to push the papers for the lake house deed. "Dad, it's just paperwork," he insisted, his voice low and urgent. "It's purely for tax reasons. It's what you want, right? To see us taken care of?" I was about to deliver the lecture he'd heard 1,000 times on the value of earning your keep, when Leo, who had been quiet coloring on a napkin, dropped his little toy truck. He ducked under the white linen tablecloth to retrieve it. As Mark prattled on about legacy and financial stability, Chad was sipping his expensive Pinot Noir, looking bored, completely unaware that the world was about to tilt on its axis. I smiled thinly, ready to politely decline Mark's request once again. Then, Leo emerged from under the table, and the blood drained from my face. The air left the room. It wasn't just my table. The nearby patrons must have heard Leo's innocent, loud whisper. Jessica's face went from sweetly composed to a terrifying shade of crimson. Chad choked on his wine, forcing a rough cough that was clearly an attempt to disguise his panic. Mark, my son, froze solid, his hand halfway to the water glass. I didn't yell. I didn't even twitch. My voice, when I spoke, was deceptively calm, the way a fuse sounds just before the explosion. I seemed to have dropped my napkin. I leaned down, slowly, deliberately. The rich, white linen tablecloth draped around my shoulders, creating a private, sick chamber beneath the antique mahogany. And there it was. It wasn't just footsie. Jessica's bare foot, exposed by her expensive high heel, was tucked deeply against Chad's inner thigh, while his polished Italian leather shoe was pressing firmly against her calf. Their legs were entwined in a manner that was entirely too intimate, too practiced, and absolutely not accidental. This wasn't some clumsy mistake. This was a silent, arrogant performance they thought was hidden. I pulled my head back up, my mind racing faster than any stock ticker. The shock wasn't that Jessica was cheating. It was the sheer audacity to do it at my table, while Mark was asking me to sign away my legacy, and right next to her own son. That level of disrespect was something I hadn't prepared for. I could feel the cold fury building in my chest, a furnace stoked by 40 years of hard work and principles being mocked by two spoiled opportunists. The expensive silver settings and crystal glasses suddenly seemed like flimsy stage props in their cheap play. I knew right then the conversation wasn't going to be about taxes or paperwork anymore. It was going to be about justice. I sat back up, letting the crumpled napkin fall back onto the carpet. I didn't address Jessica or Chad. I looked straight at my son, Mark. If he had been shocked, if he had shown even a flicker of the righteous anger a man should feel when his wife is dishonoring him in public, I might have forgiven him. I might have just paid the bill and walked away. But Mark didn't look shocked. He looked absolutely annoyed. His eyes weren't fixed on his wife's cheap betrayal. They were fixed on me. Then he shot a quick, furious glance at Jessica and Chad, subtly shaking his head, not in disgust, but in a silent command to cut it out before I saw it again. He was worried, but only about one thing: the multi-million-dollar lake house deed sitting in his briefcase, waiting for my signature. He was afraid Leo's innocent question would cost him my money. It hit me like a physical blow. Mark wasn't a victim. He was an accomplice. Or maybe just so spineless that he valued my money more than his own dignity and the respect of his son. The greed was a cancer that had consumed him entirely. This wasn't a case of a wandering wife. This was a calculated disrespect, a betrayal by both of them, executed right under my nose, banking on my silence. I saw their future flash before my eyes. Mark, weak and dependent, dragging Jessica and Chad along, all of them waiting for me to die. My cold fury suddenly turned into absolute, surgical calm. "It's getting a little warm in here," I said, my voice smooth and low. "I think I need to stretch my legs. I'll just be a minute." I pushed my chair back and stood up. I saw the relief flood Mark's eyes. He thought he'd dodged the bullet. He thought I was just an old man going to the restroom. He had no idea I was walking out to call the attorney who held the keys to his entire financial future. I pushed past the velvet rope and didn't head for the men's room. I walked straight to the maitre d' station. My demeanor was all business, the kind that moves mountains of concrete and steel. I pulled out my card, ignoring the nervous side glances of the staff. "I need to speak to your manager immediately," I stated. "Tell him Mr. Henderson needs to change the payment arrangement for table."
7. The manager, recognizing a man who spends a significant amount of money, materialized instantly. I instructed him that the large, pre-approved check for the entire event, the open bar, the custom menu, was canceled. "Only my immediate table's charges will be paid," I told him, dropping my platinum card on the counter. "Make sure the rest of the party is informed they will need to settle their own tabs tonight." That was the first volley. Next, I found a quiet, dimly lit corridor near the service entrance. I dialed Saul, my corporate attorney of 20 years. Saul doesn't ask questions, he just follows instructions. He knows when my voice has that quiet, dangerous edge. "Saul, listen closely," I said. "That deed transfer for the lake house that was set for Tuesday. Kill it. Immediately. Freeze Mark's access to the family investment account, effective immediately. Get the documents drawn up for an irrevocable trust." I held the phone tight, focusing on the dark wood paneling. The betrayal had turned my stomach, but the anger was gone, replaced by the satisfying, metallic taste of control. They had made me out to be a fool, an old man to be milked for cash. They forgot I built an empire on seeing things others miss and moving faster than anyone else. I wouldn't just take the money away. I would build a legal fortress around it, making sure it skipped over 2 generations of moral rot and went straight to the only person who deserved it, my grandson, Leo. "The trust must be irrevocable, Saul," I instructed, my back to the main dining room. "It's going to be a spendthrift trust. Mark and Jessica can't touch the principal, they can't borrow against it, and creditors can't take it. Leo gets access to the funds when he turns 25. I want an independent trustee, someone you appoint, not family. Make sure there are 0 loopholes for them to exploit." Saul was typing furiously on the other end, confirming the immediate freeze on Mark's accounts. This was my personal moment of signing the will on a napkin. I pulled a fresh napkin from the counter dispenser and scribbled 3 points. Lake house, trust. Accounts, frozen. Dinner, paid for by Mark. It was the manifesto of my financial separation from their poisonous entitlement. It felt less like revenge and more like necessary surgery to cut out a deep moral infection. "Consider it done, Hank," Saul confirmed. "I'll have the initial draft of the trust documents on your desk before dawn." I hung up and took a moment to look at my reflection in the polished glass of a wine display cabinet. I straightened my tie, smoothed the collar of my shirt, and wiped the sweat from my brow. The man who had walked away from that table was furious and confused. The man who was about to return was a creditor, a judge, and the executor of their self-inflicted sentence. I practiced a benign, slightly distracted smile. They would assume my absence was due to indigestion or just being an old man needing a moment. Let them settle back into their comfort, because the comfort zone is exactly where I intended to drop the hammer. I returned to the table and slid my chair back into place. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The panic was gone, replaced by a strained, forced cheerfulness. Jessica immediately reached across, touching my arm with a sticky, overly sweet grip. "Are you all right, Hank? We were worried about you," she cooed, her eyes darting quickly to Chad, who gave a nearly imperceptible, arrogant smirk before quickly wiping it away. They had convinced themselves I was just suffering from a touch of heartburn, or that my memory was failing. They thought they were in the clear. Mark was the most relieved. He wasted no time trying to secure the deal. He pushed the large leather briefcase closer to my plate, its gold clasp glinting under the chandelier. "Everything okay, Dad? Look, before the waiter brings the dessert menu, can we just take care of this deed transfer? We can sign the papers right here. I've even got a nice fountain pen you can use." He was practically vibrating with greed. He saw the lake house, the millions in equity, the tax-free inheritance. He didn't see the man who sat across from him, the man whose principles they had just mocked. His desperation was palpable. I picked up the elegant pen he offered, testing its weight in my hand. "You know, Mark," I said, leaning back slightly, "I think you're absolutely right. It's time to take care of the family business. It's time for everything to be settled, clearly and finally." A triumphant, greedy look flashed between Mark and Jessica. Chad subtly raised his glass in a silent, victorious toast aimed at the ceiling. They thought they had won the moment. They thought the old man was finally signing over the deed right there on the table. They felt safe. And that, I realized, was the single most satisfying part of the revenge. They were sinking into the quicksand, and they thought it was a silk bed. "Excellent, Dad," Mark beamed, his eyes glittering. "We should celebrate. Jessica, order us the Dom Perignon, the '98 vintage." Jessica, now entirely relaxed and confident, snapped her fingers at the waiter. Chad raised an eyebrow at Mark's arrogance, but said nothing, clearly just waiting for the free drinks. "Go on, Mark," I said, waving a hand generously. "Order whatever you want. Enjoy the night. After all, a proper celebration requires the best." They took my encouragement as a blank check, ordering the expensive cognac after the champagne, treating the event as if the deed to the lake house was already signed and sealed. Their arrogance was reaching its peak. Just as the waiter poured the deep gold liquid into Mark's glass, the restaurant manager approached our table with quiet efficiency. He didn't come with the deed or the transfer papers. He came with a thin, embossed envelope containing the final itemized bill for our table only. Discreetly placed it next to my plate, along with my platinum card and a receipt for the payment I had already finalized with him. Mark and Jessica barely registered the exchange, too busy clinking their glasses and basking in their imagined victory. The trap was set. They thought this was the toast to their inheritance. I knew it was the toast to their financial oblivion. I watched them, these three people, Mark, Jessica, and Chad, cheating, conniving, and celebrating their expected financial windfall. They were so consumed by their own victory that they didn't even notice the small piece of paper confirming the exact charges I had authorized for our table, while the huge bill for their entire party was now entirely their responsibility. I smiled, raised my own water glass, and offered a short, final toast. To family, I said, my voice steady, and to the truth. I placed the manager's envelope neatly into my inner jacket pocket, the action deliberate and slow, ignoring the anxious darting of Mark's eyes. He cleared his throat, his patience wearing thin. "Dad, the papers," he prompted, practically demanding the pen back. "You said you wanted this settled. Let's just sign it and get this done. For the family." I held up the fountain pen. "For the family," I repeated, the irony sharp enough to cut glass. I looked past him, watching Leo innocently playing with a sugar packet. "You know, Mark, a true legacy isn't about how many assets you accumulate. It's about trust. It's about what you pass down and what values you uphold. I'm choosing my legacy very carefully tonight." Jessica giggled, a fake, brittle sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, Hank, don't start the lecture now. We get it. We love Leo, and we love the lake house." Her dismissal was a fatal mistake. "No," I said, my voice dropping, forcing them to lean in. "You don't get it. You were so busy playing footsie and counting my money that you forgot the small, innocent eyes watching you. Leo saw the truth tonight, and he told me exactly what I needed to know about the state of this family and your fitness to manage my life's work." I slowly pushed my chair back and stood up, the loud scraping sound drawing the attention of half the room. I looked across the dining hall at the 60 guests, the elaborate floral arrangements, and the empty space where the colossal cake should have been. I held the pen loosely in my hand, no longer a tool for signing, but a pointer. I was ready to deliver my toast, the one they weren't expecting, the one that was going to change everything. I stood tall, tapping the rim of a water glass with Mark's expensive fountain pen. The surrounding chatter died down. "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate what Mark and Jessica hoped would be their financial future," I started. Jessica's smug look evaporated instantly. Chad looked ill. Mark started to rise, sheer panic in his eyes. "Dad, don't do this." "Sit down, Mark," I commanded, the authority in my voice absolute. "Tonight, my 5-year-old grandson Leo taught me about loyalty. He asked why Daddy's friend was playing footsie with Mommy. I dropped my napkin, and I saw the truth of your moral bankruptcy. You knew, Mark, and you tolerated it for the money. That ends now." A shocked, gasping silence spread through the entire dining room. I addressed the hall, loud and clear. "Effective immediately, the inheritance you were expecting, the trust funds, the lake house, the business shares, is gone. It has been placed into an irrevocable trust solely for my grandson, Leo, bypassing both his parents entirely." I pulled the manager's receipt from my pocket, placing it neatly on the table, next to the deed papers Mark had wanted me to sign. "I have paid for my appetizer and this glass of water. As for the rest of this lavish event you ordered, the $5,000 bar tab, the Dom Perignon, the cost of all your 60 guests, Mark, that is your responsibility now." I looked him straight in his panicked, greedy eyes. "Welcome to financial independence, son. You wanted to be a man? Pay your own bill." I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving the sound of dropped forks and astonished whispers in my wake. The silence was deafening. It's been a little over a year since I walked out of the Capitol Grill. The fallout was exactly what Mark and Jessica deserved.
Mark couldn't pay the massive party bill, the restaurant sued him, and the social humiliation was instant and complete. The marriage didn't last another month. Without my money, their relationship, built entirely on greed and deception, collapsed. Jessica quickly moved on with Chad, and Mark was left with the debt and the disgrace. They were finally forced to learn the meaning of hard work, something they detested more than anything. For me, life is finally good. I legally secured primary visitation rights for Leo, leveraging the court's distaste for Mark's complete financial instability and moral standing. I retired completely, and now, most weekends, you can find Leo and me out on the dock at the lake house, the one Mark desperately wanted. The sun is shining, the water is calm, and the inheritance is safe for the only person who deserves it. I found peace, knowing I protected my legacy and, more importantly, my grandson from their toxicity. Now I want to ask you, did I do the right thing, cutting them off so completely? What would you have done in my position? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this cold dose of justice, please hit that like button. And if you want more true stories of epic revenge, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The end. Thank you for listening.